Hello soulmates, you're welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this tutorial, I will be drafting and explaining how to create this elegant gown design. I will not be sewing it, but I'll take you through the pattern drafting process step by step. If this is something you're interested in learning, do keep on watching, and if you enjoy content like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Before we dive into the drafting properly, let's first of all analyze the dress and understand the structure and how to bring it to life. This gown was inspired by Royal Couture Ghana, and I'll be analyzing the structure and drafting a similar pattern as a guide for creating your own version. This gown is a structured corset mammy dress with a mix of lace fabric and kente fabric. It features a sweetheart neckline on the front with a short shoulder design that gives an off-shoulder effect but still providing coverage. And it has a long fitted sleeves with a dramatic sleeve on top. The back of the dress features a deep U-shaped neckline with a visible zipper closure. To add more structure and fit, you can incorporate an invisible corset lacing on the inside depending on your preference. The skirt part, as you can see, is a mermaid skirt with an added train to the front and the back. The hip area features a curved cutout design, blending the lace and kente fabric for a unique contrast. So that's all for the dress analysis. Now let's dive into the pattern drafting properly. Now that we've analyzed the dress, let's begin drafting the bustier part. I've got my masking tape, my rulers, pattern paper and other tools for drafting ready. So I wrote a straight line on the top of my pattern, which is serving as my shoulder line. And then from that line, I will mark the essential lines, which are my bust point line, my underbust and half lengths. So after marking all the points, I will connect to form a straight line. After connecting all the lines, next I went ahead to label them for easy recognition. I have my bust point line, my underbust, my half length and my shoulder. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to mark my shoulder divided by 2 on my shoulder line, just like you see me doing. After marking the shoulder, I came down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. And then I marked my neckline with a width and a depth of 3 inches. This is not the actual neckline we're working with, this is just serving as a guide for my basic bodice. Then after doing that, I connected my shoulder slant and I curved the neckline. So then I came down by 8 inches from my shoulder slant and I ruled a straight line on that point, which is going to serve as my chest line. So I'll also be marking my shoulder divided by 2 on the chest line and I will connect straight to my shoulder slant, just like you see me doing. Then having done that, I'm going to get the midpoint of that arm side length and I'll come in by 0.5 inch on that midpoint. Then after doing that, on the chest line, I'll be taking my bust measurement divided by 4. So I'll connect the 3 points together from my shoulder slant to my chest line using my armhole curve. So after marking all these lines, next thing I'll be doing now is to impute the dots. So first of all, I will divide the bust span measurement into 2 and I'll start marking the points from my bust point line to my half length. Then after doing that, I connected to form a straight line. Then I'll go over to my shoulder and divide what I have on my shoulder into 2. And then I'll connect from that point to my bust point line. So this line is serving as a guide to know where I will put my overbust dart. So first of all, I'll be marking my overbust length, which is also known as my off shoulder. So I want to make it 6.5. Starting from my shoulder line, I came down by 6.5. Then I ruled a straight line on that point. So I'm just going to label that part my off shoulder line. So I'll be taking 0.75 on the darts for the half length. And then I'll place 1.5 inch on that point and mark towards the other side. So this means that the whole dart I have on the half length is 1.5 inch. Then on the underbust, I'll also be marking 0.75 on the center front. And then I'll place 2 inches on that point and connect to the other side. So 2 inches is the whole of the dart I have on the underbust and 1.5 inch for the half length. And then after doing that, I'll use my curved ruler to connect from each of the dart leg to the bust points. So then on the off shoulder line, I will mark 0.75 on both sides of the line. And then I'll use my curved ruler to connect to the bust point line to form my bustier shape. So guys, next thing I'm going to do now is to mark my sweetheart neckline. So I came down by 8.5 inch from my shoulder line and then I will connect using my curved ruler from the dart leg. So after marking the sweetheart neckline, next thing I'm going to do now is to extend the dart. The dart that I took on the oval bust is 1.5 inch. So I'm just going to replace back half of it, which is 0.75 to the side part. Then I'll use my arm curve ruler to connect to form my new armhole. So this is a new technique that I figured out and it has been working very well for me. So having done that, I'll go ahead to make it visible using my marker. So right here on this yoke part, I'll be holding a dart so that it's going to make your dart to be relaxed after cutting it. It's not going to be excess. So I went ahead to mark ½ inch for the dart. The whole of the dart is ½ inch. Then I connected to my shoulder like this. So if you're working with a full yoke, maybe you want to put a full yoke on your dress, then you need to do this to tighten the yoke. So next I'll connect from the other side of the dart towards the armhole like this. You can use your free hand or you can use your curved ruler to get the curve just like you see me doing. So for the shoulder styling, I'll connect from the midpoint of the shoulder to where the dart stops on the bustier. So this is how my shoulder is going to look like. You can choose to make the shoulder more tiny or you can just maintain this half of the shoulder. So I'll continue by taking my body measurements. I will be marking quarter of my waist measurement on my half length. Then I'll replace the bigger dart, which is the dart on the underbust, to it. Then after doing that, I'll connect together like so. So next, I'll go ahead to mark my bust dart. I came down by 2 inches from my bust point line on the side. Then I will connect to my bustier line like so. So before I go ahead to cut my front pattern, I will be adding that stylish curve that we have at the front half length. So I will come down by 2 inches or 2.5 inches from my half length like so. And then I'm going to curve from that point to the dart leg on the center front. So having done that, I'll go ahead to make all the lines visible and cut out my pattern. And then I added my sewing allowance of 1.5 inch to the side before I go ahead to cut. So guys, after cutting, next thing I'm going to do now is to close my bust dart. And after closing the bust dart, I will cut out the excess pattern I have on the side part. So guys, this is what I have it looking like so far. Looking at the style, the front bodice was mixed with lace and kente fabric. So I'm going to cut out the bustier area separately, just like in the image. So first of all, I'm going to rule a straight line on my underbust for the center front. And then for the side part, I'll measure what I have on my bust point like you see me doing. And then I'll place it on the side part and add 1 inch to it. If you're on the bigger side, you can make use of 1.5 inch. Then after doing that, I'll place my curved ruler to connect to my underbust all the way to the armhole. So I'm going to cut out the line that I marked, and this is going to separate the bustier part from the half length. So yes, I just went ahead to tape all the patterns together to make it look like a dress, so you'll be able to see how it's going to look like. So the bustier area is going to be serving as the lace and the bottom part as the kente fabric. So at this point, we are done with the front half length. So I went ahead to mark my back half length and I made it 16 inches because of my bust dart of 2 inches that is removed from the front half length. Then I went ahead to mark my shoulder divided by 2 and 1 inch for my shoulder slope and 3 inches for the neck wideness, and I came down by 1.5 inch for the neck depth. So this is almost the same thing I did for the front. After marking out the point, I connected my shoulder slope and my neckline. And then I came down from my shoulder slant by 8 inches, which is my arm side length. Then I ruled a straight line on that point. Then I'll take half of my shoulder on that point after my zipper allowance and then connect to my shoulder slant. Then I'm going to get the midpoint of that line. I'll come in by ½ an inch, and on my chest line, I will mark quarter of my bust measurements. Then the 3 points I will be connecting to form my armhole curve. So after taking the bust measurement, on the half length, I will take quarter of the waist measurement. and then I will mark 1 inch for my dart allowance. And so I'll connect the points from my chest line to my half length. Then after doing that, I'll be adding my sewing allowance of 1.5 inches, and I'll also connect those 2 points together. So guys, to mark the dart, I'll measure the exact waist measurement on the half length and divide it into two. Then what I have there, I'll also place on my chest line, and then I'll connect the 2 points to form a straight line. So then on the half length, I'll take 0.5 inch on both sides of the line and connect to form my darts. And then for the back neckline, I will get the midpoint of the shoulder, which is also the same length of the shoulder for my front. So after marking the midpoint of the shoulder, I use my straight ruler to connect to the line on my chest line. So I'm going to mark the depth of the back neckline. I came up by 1 inch from my chest line on the zipper allowance, and then I'm going to connect using my free hand to the midpoint of the shoulder like so. So having done that, I'm going to remove zipper bulge from my zipper allowance before cutting the pattern. So I measured what I have on my zipper allowance to get the midpoint, and I will slant that to the top. So I'm going to eliminate that part, and because of the fact it's going to be removed from my pattern, I have to replace it to the side part. So I went ahead to measure the same amount I removed from the zipper allowance on the side part, and I connected to my bust line. So having done that, this is what I have it looking like. I'll just go ahead to measure the zipper allowance so you see how it looks like. So I measured the 1.5 inch, and then I slanted to my neck depth. So next thing I'm going to do is to cut out the back pattern. So I just want to use this means to reply a comment that a subscriber commented some time ago about the fact that the back half length and the front half length is usually different because of the side bust dart. So what I did was to just place my front half length to the back half length side like this, and I'm going to correct it. So you can see that there's a little bit of difference, just half inch. So the thing is, my front half length is 18 inches, right? After removing my 2 inches for the bust dart, it is going to be reduced on the side part. So that is going to make my back half length to be shorter. So my back half length now is 16 inches. So that is the way to make your front half length and your back half length to be equal. So having done that, I'll go ahead to cut out my back pattern. So this is how the back and the front pattern looks like. The back bodice was made with kente fabric. So next thing I'm going to do now is to cut the skirt part. So guys, for the skirt part, I'll be making use of a small pattern paper. Like I said, I am not sewing the dress, I am just drafting the pattern. So I'm just going to make use of this small pattern paper to illustrate it, but it is still the same process. So first thing I did was to measure my waist to hip on my pattern. Then I measured my waist to knee length and my full length of the skirt. The next thing I'm going to do now is to take quarter of my round waist measurement on my waistline. Then if you want your waist to have a dart, I don't normally put that on the front part of my skirt. I like to put it on my back. So I'll be using this front pattern to cut the back. So I added my sewing allowance and my dart allowance. Then on the hip line, I went ahead to measure quarter of my hip measurement and my sewing allowance. So I connected the sewing allowance of the waist to the hip line, and then I also connected the dart allowance to the hip line, just like you see. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to measure what I have on my hip measurement, on my exact hip, and I'm going to place it on my knee length. So if you want a very tapered knee for your mermaid skirt, you can remove 1.5 inches from whatever you have on your hip length. But because of this style is not too tapered around the knee length, I'll just remove just 1 inch. So I will explain again. I measured my hip length, my initial hip, on my knee length, and I removed 1 inch. Then I added my sewing allowance to it. So after doing that, I connected to my hip measurement like so. So next, we're going to mark the wideness of the A-line skirts. So I will measure what I have on my hip measurement and multiply it by 2 if you want it to be fuller. But if you don't want it to be fuller, you can do your hip measurement times 1.5 inch plus your sewing allowance. So after doing that, I will connect from my knee length to the point on my skirt length. to form my A-line. After doing that, on the side part, I came up by ½ inch and I decided to curve it a little bit. So I'll go ahead now to cut out the line on my pattern. And then for the knee length, I'm going to blend that sharp point that I have there, and then I'll continue cutting. So guys, after cutting the skirt part, this is what I have it looking like. So I'll place it on another pattern paper to cut out the back. So I folded my pattern again, and then I placed the front pattern on top of the other pattern paper. And you can choose to do this on your main fabric. So I folded with my zipper allowance and I pinned the center front to it. Then after doing that, I went ahead to cut the same shape on the other pattern paper that is going to serve as the back. So guys, after doing that, I took out the front pattern from it, and then I shear open the zipper allowance, just like you see me doing. Before separating the front pattern from the back, I will first of all extend the knee length line, and I'm also going to take note of the zipper allowance before taking it out. So I went ahead to extend my zipper allowance, and then I'm going to be cutting out that allowance from the front waist. So after doing that, this is what I have it looking like. The dart is going to be for just the back skirt. So the next thing we're going to do now is to take note of the tray, because the skirt has a tray on the front and also on the back. So guys, for the front tray, if you look at the image closely, the front tray is not starting from the knee length, so it came down a bit. So I just came down by 1 inch for my front tray, and then I connected to form like an A-line shape. I'll be cutting that part out. While the back tray, according to the image, started from the knee length. So I'm also going to place my straight ruler from the knee line and connect slant like this. So after doing that, I'll cut out that part from the pattern. So after doing that, the next thing we're going to do is to do the styling for the skirt part. So if you look at the picture, the front skirt part has some styling. So it is a mixture of the lace fabric, then the kente fabric, and then the lace for the tray. So that curve shape that will cut out from the half length, we're going to be cutting it out from the skirt. So I'm just using this front half length as a guide to cut it out, even if it's not the same measurement. I just don't want us to be confused. So I brought the front half length to place on the skirt waistline to cut out the shape. So when you fix your skirt part to your half length, is going to correspond very well. So the next part is to get that curve effect on the hip. So I came down by 1.5 inches from that curve line, and then I'm just going to curve to my knee line. So you can see the way I'm using my free hand to curve it. You can use your curved ruler if it fits. That part is going to be cut out. I just went ahead to label that part, the lace fabric, and the down part is going to be the kente fabric. And then the tray that will be added to the front is going to be lace. So moving on to the back, you're going to get your back bodice and mash up with the skirt part of the back to be able to mark your darts. So this is going to make your back bodice and the skirt part darts to correspond very well when you fix it. So after doing that, I came down by the length that I want the darts to be, and I connected the 2 half-inch points together like so. So the back has its own curve styling, which is quite different from the front, but it is still the same mixture of fabric, which is the lace and the kente fabric. So first of all, I came down by 2 inches from my back waistline. You can do exactly the same thing on your main fabric. So I extended the 2 inches to my zipper allowance, and then I connected from my knee line to form a curve to that point. So you can use the same measurement I used right now for your back, or you can manipulate it anyhow you want. So I labeled the top pattern, the lace, and then the kente fabric for the down parts. The next thing we want to do now is to cut the tray for both the front and the back. Before going ahead to cut out the tray, I want to make a little bit of correction. So to get these cut out parts to fix your tray for the mermaid skirts, I noticed that they did it from the midpoint of the skirt length. Okay, so what you're going to do is measure the wideness of your skirt length and divide it by 2. So after doing that for both the front and the back, I just notched the point. Then after notching the point, I will also go ahead to slant it again and cut it out. So I will explain again if you don't quite understand what I mean. The wideness of your skirt length, you're going to get the midpoint, and that is what you are going to cut out for your tray opening. So I also do the same thing for the front like this. So I'm going to cut out that line from the waist to the knee length. I'll cut out that curve shape. If you're going to mix it just like the inspiration, you cut it out and then add your sewing allowance before you join it back together after placing on your different fabric. So this is how it's going to look like. And then also the same thing for the back. You're going to cut out the pattern first of all, add your sewing allowance and fix it together before going ahead to fix your darts, because I'm using a smaller pattern. That's why the darts did not get to the down part. So ensure that you cut out your pattern if you're going to recreate a style and place on your fabric, join together first. To cut the train for the front skirt, I measure what I have from below the knee to the skirt hem, and I'll keep this aside. So I got another pattern paper that I'm going to use to cut the tray. You can cut directly on your fabric. So on the open part, I will place exactly what I measured. I measured 8 inches. So I placed 8 inches and ½ inch for sewing allowance. Then I went ahead to connect like this to form a curve. Know that the folded part is going to be longer, so that's the reason why I drew a curve that is longer than the length. So after opening it up like this, if you don't want it to be very long, you can reconnect it properly the way you want it. So after cutting out the train pattern, you're going to fix on the open part of your train on the skirt. So this is how it's going to look like. So for the back part, I'll first of all be closing my zipper allowance before I'll measure to be able to cut out the tray. So after closing the zipper allowance like this, I measured from the midpoint to the skirt hem, and then I folded my remaining pattern into two to cut out the tray for the back. So then on the folded part, you're going to measure exactly what you have and add ½ inch for sewing allowance. Then you're just going to connect like this to form a curve, and the folded part is going to be longer because the tray obviously is going to be longer on the back. So after doing that, I'll go ahead to cut out the pattern. So this is what we're going to have it looking like. After fixing your zipper, then you go ahead to fix your tray for the back. So guys, before we finish up with the design, I want to reduce the shoulder of my pattern to make it smaller, just like the picture. And then for the sleeve, it has a normal long body sleeve and a dramatic sleeve on top, so you can get a straight fabric and slash and spread it to be wide enough to pleat. So I went ahead to reduce the shoulder with just ½ inch on the shoulder, and then I measured in 0.75 on the chest line. So I'm just going to cut it like this, and I'll also do the same thing for the back. So this is all for the making of this design. If you want to see more tutorial like this, do well to like and subscribe to the channel if you're yet to. So guys, see you in the next one, and thank you so much for watching.